Now, to a media scandal. Now, you might have been wondering, why it is that Israeli soldiers are mysteriously now finding things in Gaza that almost no reporters there ever mention. Are they making things up? Things like, Hamas is actually using hospitals as military bases, which America has just confirmed. Like Hamas using a room at one school to make rockets for its terrorists. Like Hamas putting rocket launchers even in scout halls. Now, the reason maybe that journalists were so blind to all this happening right under their noses is that Hamas actually does run Gaza like a police state. And journalists there know better than to tell the truth. People are shot for that. In fact, check what happens when a reporter from Al Jazeera, which is owned by Qatar, which backs Hamas, interviewed a wounded Palestinian man who then complained on camera, "Why is Hamas hiding among us at the hospital? Why don't they just go to hell and hide there?" The reporter cut him off, and boy, he looked scared.
كيف يتخبى بين الناس؟ ليش يتخبى بين الناس؟ يروح في جهنم يتخبى. يعني هذه شهادات من المواطنين بسبب هذا
But the real scandal now exposed is that Western media organisations like CNN, AP and Reuters, they have been using freelance reporters in Gaza who actually accompanied the Hamas terrorists who on October 7 attacked Israel and slaughtered 1,200 Jews. And they included this journalist photographed being kissed by the Hamas leader in Gaza. And this is a journalist who was then filmed with a grenade in his hand, getting a lift into Israel for that Hamas attack. And here's the grenade in his hand. And here he is during that attack in front of Israeli tanks captured by the terrorists. Joining me from New York is filmmaker and commentator Ami Horowitz. Ami Horowitz, great to see you again. Look, none of the freelance journalists who went on this attack with Hamas warned Israelis they were in danger. What's been the reaction from the news agencies who actually use these people and their reports and pictures?
It's incredible. One particular, the one that CNN used. I mean, their announcement on this guy they used who was throwing grenades. He participated in this attack. He wasn't just a journalist covering it. He was involved in it. He was a stringer for CNN. And CNN's comment was, well, we don't have any proof that any of his any of the stories he provided us were biased. That was their response. But yeah, we decided to cut ties with him. I mean, it's truly incredible. And honestly, it's not making a whole lot of waves in the media here, in the mainstream media here in the U.S., because they know the culpability that they have, because they understand that locally in Gaza are controlled by Hamas. So therefore, whatever you're getting from Gaza essentially is filtered through Hamas. This has been going on for years. This is nothing new. So, of course, the mainstream media here wants to ignore it as much as they possibly can. Play it down.
Yeah, it seems to me this has gone away so quickly with the media organisations answering just one question. So, we didn't know this attack was going to happen. They weren't pre-warned, or they didn't warn us, and so we couldn't do anything. And this, we just used this stuff. But that doesn't even come close to it, because as you say, if we've got people here that are so embedded with Hamas that they come on a killing spree with them without giving warning, then how can you trust anything they report? They wouldn't be going around telling you, but on the other hand, this is what Hamas is doing to its own people. They wouldn't be giving you that sort of stuff. Of course, there's a bias here.
No, you can't trust any information coming from Gaza, including the mainstream media's coverage of it, because they're using people locally. Look, you can't trust the UN. You can't trust the Red Cross. You can't trust any of these organizations, not necessarily because the organizations themselves are untrustworthy, although an argument can be made for that. It's because all of their information are coming from people they hire on the ground in Gaza, all who are affiliated one way or another with Hamas. That's just the reality of the situation, including, by the way, the number of deaths that have happened in Gaza. We don't know what the real numbers are. It's impossible to know through the fog of war. So I remember when the hospital was bombed by Islamic Jihad, right? Somehow within minutes, they knew 500 people were dead. And of course, what happened? All of the media reported it as fact. because their stringers on the ground who work through Hamas were giving them that numbers. It's perverse.
And it's you're quite right about those figures where they say, well, look, we keep getting told how many children have allegedly been killed, and it usually is about a quarter, maybe a third of the total, which is weird because Israel is actually fighting Hamas terrorists, and you never get a breakdown of how many there are actually young men or men generally. It's just the children, which I think is actually an inflated number. I mean, any child death is a tragedy, but I think the numbers are inflated. I don't get the lack of skepticism. But the media coverage of Gaza, Army, it gives people the idea that Israel has occupied it. It hasn't, not until this war, not for 17 years. And it was an open-air concentration camp. I kept getting told that. But when you look at footage of Gaza, or at least the nicer bits before the war that Hamas started, you see that it's not what activists like to claim and what most media presents. This reporting on Gaza, Army, what do you make of it?
So, okay, a couple things. First of all, Gaza was never occupied. There was not a single IDF troop in Gaza since they disengaged from Gaza, right? That's first of all, like you said. Now, open air prison, first of all, to be clear, only has control over one of its border. The northern border has absolutely no control whatsoever of the southern border. That border could be open tomorrow. Just the Egyptians who control the Rafah crossing have it closed. So to blame Israel for being a quote unquote open air prison is ridiculous. I've been to Gaza after this engagement, and Gaza wasn't a wonderland for certain, but to make this idea that this open air prison nonsense, that nobody had food and fuel, there was plenty of food and fuel, and people were out and they were working. Life was relatively normal there. Okay, it wasn't the same life you have in Tel Aviv, but that's the fault of who? That's the fault of the Hamas government, because they were diverting economic flow that was coming into Gaza for use in weapons.
Ami, I can't wait for your own film on this war. You were in Israel filming. You're now back in the US. We hope to have some sort of preview at some stage, so let us know when it's on. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Always a pleasure.
That last bit of overlay you might have seen, Hamas pulling up water pipes and converting them into rockets. I think this sort of says it all.